welcome to another episode of Ask Adam Live. ASK is the acronym for Always Seek Knowledge. One thing I strive with each one of these episodes, this one included, is that you ask, that you always seek knowledge about yourself, the life around you, and maybe even learn something from others. Ask to understand that life is happening for you and not to you. And I think once you start putting all of those variables together, you'll understand that life is, well, it's a strategy. It's strategically being played with you, for you, in unison. And the idea that there's any level of stress incorporated in that, well, that's maybe some of our own design and involvement that, quite frankly, I hope we can try to remove from your life, and that you can realize that you can convert your pressure into progress. Let's get on with the show. Stress to strategy, converting pressure into progress. Pressure isn't the problem. Direction is. Stress is energy. The question is, are you wasting it or are you directing it? How many of us have deadlines? Financial pressure? Career transitions? How about my leaders out there? Is there a leadership load that you're experiencing? Maybe even you've created some personal expectations. You know, from what I understand, talking to many people, most people react to stress emotionally. But high performers, now they convert it strategically. You know, I remember a time in my life when, well, it was stressful. I changed job, changed cities, changed careers kind of, in a certain way. And well, in that transition, well, I started asking myself, first of all, who was responsible for all this? And it wasn't blame. Don't get me wrong. I was strategically asking myself, who was responsible for this? Why did I move 1,000 miles? Why did I start in a new city? Having to find a new position, a new job, a new daily, as I call it, as I was still trying to figure some things out. Now, I had dialed into this idea once before, but, you know, things got in the way and I wasn't focused. Now, not to say that I haven't ever been focused. I've always been focused on what I'm doing. Although I can say that for a period of my life, in about 7 years, that I just wasn't focused. And I guess I was focused on the wrong things, and much of that was derived from a stressful environment and atmosphere that forced me into survival rather than focus and strategy, which I had been at before. So it wasn't foreign. And how I allowed it to just get misplaced, well, I can only chalk that up to, like I said, life is happening for me, not to me. Certainly lessons learned, and certainly gives me the authority and ability to share with you today that, well, if you're in that state and you are surviving and there is that level of stress, well, yeah, you're probably exercising a lot of emotions and you're living at that high stress level. And you're probably not doing things with strategy, but more reactively. Now, what I hope in this episode is that I'm going to give you a 4-part stress conversion framework that will help transform your anxiety into forward motion. And I can tell you that once you begin that forward motion and you begin this repetitive behavior on a consistent level, that your life will change. And that you'll begin to dial in some of that focus and you'll begin making some of those strategic changes which will allow you to make those career pivots. And even somewhere through that, you'll start to discover who you truly are and what you are absolutely designed to do, and wrap all that in to a wonderful package called you. And you're going to begin to do something that you ultimately love to do, that builds energy, and you're relaxed. I hope you're looking forward to this episode as much as I am, because at the end of it, you'll realize that stress didn't disappear, it just got redirected. Let's get started. Part one: what stress actually is. Stress is not weakness. It is, well, really, it's a physiological activation state. It's a signal of perceived importance. It's a cue that something matters. Here are the two types of stress. There's chronic unmanaged stress, which, well, if lived with continuously, will create burnout. And this can be applied. I probably should put a caveat on this, is that it can be applied to life, to business, and to anything really, even a relationship. And then you have a direct acute stress, which is growth. Stress is simply readiness without a plan. See, when the brain senses threat, it mobilizes energy. And if you don't assign it a target, well, then it turns into worry. So by having your mind aligned with a goal, with a target, which you can align with a trajectory, well, now you can start to put this stress, well, into kind of a straight line, or at least into a direction, hopefully a straight line. And that when you do encounter the stress at any level, that you will find how to harness that stress and utilize the energy. Much like the wind in a turbine, it pivots on that pole so that it accommodates whichever direction the wind is coming from. It's going to utilize that and create energy. Same thing with solar panels, where they may sit on a pedestal and pivot with the sun as it rises and falls around the planet. So it's obtaining and capturing the sun's rays as it's rotating around the earth. That makes sense? So what we're going to do is utilize that movement to be able to harness this energy. Fair enough? Let's get into part two, the 4-step stress conversion framework. First of all, let's name the pressure. What exactly is stressing you? What is the outcome you're possibly afraid of? We can begin, first of all, with one of my favorite things, which is journaling, scribing, writing things down. Get specific. See, if you just sketch out some vague stress, well, that's just going to amplify the stress. We really want to narrow this down to something specific. Like, are you feeling overwhelmed? Maybe the stress is that you're feeling one of the other toxic 10, which is maybe some imposter syndrome. Maybe you're feeling like you're not good enough. Maybe you're feeling like you have something. You perceive that you have something. Maybe that you're unable to grasp a concept. Maybe you're unable to see the future. Maybe you're unable to see your gifts and abilities. But let's look at overwhelm. No, I don't think it's overwhelm. Maybe it's that you're behind on a project and you're worried about losing the client because, well, you haven't gotten the project together. See, clarity is going to reduce this intensity because if you're focused, well, you're not going to be behind. You're not going to suffer that overwhelm. So you need to be focused on your intention. So write down what it is specifically that you're feeling and hone in on what that feeling is that's creating that stress. What is it? And then I want you to dive a little bit deeper to see exactly why are you feeling overwhelmed? What is that activity that is causing you to feel overwhelmed? And there's something yesterday or even in your past that is reflecting a level of that feeling overwhelmed. Number two is separate the signal from story. Signal is real data, real information. The story, well, that's our mental exaggeration. Many times we can tell ourselves something and, well, it's kind of not true. But if you look at the real data to see that, well, maybe you accomplish things 1 out of 5 times, well, that's the data and that's your ratio. You really can't argue with that. Those are statistics and they're pretty concrete. It's the proof. And you may tell yourself, oh, but the other 4 I really tried. Well, probably not. But nonetheless, maybe the signal is deadline is Friday. And the story you're telling yourself is if you miss this, your career collapses. See, high performers challenge narrative inflation. And they ask themselves, what is fact and what is projection? See, when you align yourself up with the signal and not with the story that you're telling yourself, well, you can better hone in on how to react with this stress. So how can we do that? Well, that's the convert strategy. This is how we're going to direct that energy of stress. Now, you want to ask yourself, what action would reduce this stress by maybe even 20%? Nothing drastic, but 20%. That's fair. You don't want to eliminate it. You just want to reduce it. Again, I think kind of the more honed down something is, think of it as being more aerodynamic. So the more you can kind of shave off the edges, well, now we can really get it towards that target and really dial it into working for our good and not against us. So again, we're not trying to eliminate. I don't think you ever can eliminate it, but you can certainly redirect it and allow it to be useful in getting towards your target. You want to break this into 3 immediate actions. See, stress decreases when you put it into motion. So if you're challenged with something, what are 3 things that you can do immediately to reduce this by, like I said, that earlier 20%? Maybe being a little bit more prepared about something, maybe putting it on a calendar so you're aware so it doesn't catch you off guard. Maybe it's doing a little bit of research on something that you're more aware of the peripheral, not necessarily the details. Like I said, stress decreases when motion begins. So what are these 3 things that we can put into action? And you'll find that action metabolizes your anxiety. It's kind of weird that the brain sees and feels you doing something and it no longer feels stressed because now it's feeling productive. So now that we've converted this into a strategy, how can we install recovery windows? Because strategy without recovery, well, that's just going to be collapse. See, high performers, they oscillate. They push, recover, and they do this repetitively. So even in a stressful situation, they're not building it up. They're utilizing it, and then they're deflecting, and they're utilizing and deflecting. So see how it's not piling up like a wall of bricks. It's actually just being used enough to be utilized, but not to be built. Does that make sense? So push and recover. Now set yourself up with a schedule. This is how you can do this, is set yourself up with some movement. Maybe it's getting up and walking around. You know, I remember when I was in a sales office, one of the things I would do, maybe after a stressful engagement with a client or just a meeting that was really tough to get through, I found myself just simply walking down the hall. I would go down to the break room, which actually had a gorgeous view of the city. We were on the second floor, and I just look out and see the traffic. And there was a construction that was going across the street. They were building a multi-level hotel, and so I just kind of watched it, all the interworkings of things, and then I'd walk back down the hall, and heck, even a couple times I'd just take the steps and go downstairs and walk around that lower level and come back up and walk up the steps and get back to my office. And it was just amazing that just stepping away from the environment, from the space, just reset things. I almost like I left everything downstairs, came back up with a new mindset, and I was refreshed. So I share with you that movement is certainly one of the first things you can do to recover. Maybe some breath resets. If you don't have the ability to just step away and go out somewhere, maybe just staying in that space and clearing it with some good breath resets. This not only sort of retrains the mind to think of something different, but it calms you down. Physiologically, it calms you down. Breathe in, hold it, and breathe out. And do that several times, 3 to 5 times. Maybe even some thinking blocks. I had shared in a couple other episodes where just sitting there for 15 minutes and focus on something. Maybe it's even just some journaling or just focusing on 3 tasks that are absolutely unrelated to whatever just most recently happened. Because remember, you want to have top of mind of your goals and not let these little issues that create these little forms of stress that they're all of a sudden going to tackle your day. No, you want to kind of ride them like an ocean wave and a surfer, where you catch it and it brings you to the beach, and you go back out and catch it and it brings you to the beach. So you may find that just writing might help to kind of calm things down as you're thinking about something completely different and eliminate that stress. And you want to marginalize it a little bit too. Not to say you forget it, but don't let it build up, and just keep it kind of on the peripheral, adjacent to your goals and situation. Not really to blow it off, but to just kind of say, you know what, it's over here, right? It's off to the side. Can't be focused on it. I'm aware of it. It's over here, but keep moving forward. This is going to preserve your long-term performance. Part 3, where stress becomes your strength. See, under this pressure and how it's going to create your strength is it sharpens your focus, right? If you're under a little bit of maybe some time pressure, you know you have to make a decision in a period of time, well, you're going to be a little bit more focused on it and making a faster decision possibly. And this builds some emotional growth too. It's going to build that emotional muscle that next time you encounter this, you might be a little faster to decide. You might not be as emotional. Like you're still going to ride the emotion roller coaster, but just not as high or as low. And you're just going to kind of like a speed bump, just a little adjustment, and then you're back into the game. Also, the identity expansion. You realize that this is not you, but it's part of you. It's of you. It's part of your learning experience. Adding to your resume that you've learned something else, if you will. And you tie this to decision speed, confidence on command. These are some of these tiny levers adding to your morning ownership. Every major growth phase is uncomfortable. See, the goal isn't comfort, it's control. And I'm not saying you're going to be able to control everything after following some of these steps, but you're at least going to control your sphere and how you react and your little part of it, if you will. Here's some common mistakes that I want to share with you is, just venting without action. Anybody can sit and get upset, right? And just venting, maybe even to the wrong person, is highly ineffective, or just venting to your team. They don't need to feel your stress. You need to sometimes cushion that. You also want to avoid letting that pressure come to a point, because what happens is it's going to build up, and then something adjacent to what even caused the pressure is going to cause you to kind of, come to a point where it's just unbearable. And then you may create a situation where your actions, they're not really reversible. And you certainly don't want to be into that situation, because that goes into our next common mistake, which is the catastrophic outcomes. You're also mistaking urgency for importance. Give yourself time to really think about it, because having to make a decision right away might not be the best time to make a decision. One of the other common mistakes is skipping recovery, to think, I don't need it this time. I'm just relaxed, or just give me 2 minutes. I don't have 15. No, don't sell yourself short. You need recovery. Be honest with yourself and say, I need time to recover. Step aside, step away, step around, step however. Adjust as you need to, but you need to focus on recovery, because like I said, if you don't utilize the brick will create a wall. The wall will create a situation that, is irreversible. So don't allow that wall to build. Utilize that brick as some type of energy and utilize it some other way. Let me give you an example. For example, you might say to yourself, I need to grow revenue this quarter. So name what your revenue gap is. Let's say it's $10,000, hypothetically speaking. And your signal versus story, your signal is you need 5 new clients. The story you're probably telling yourself is that the business is failing because you have this gap. Now, how you can convert this is identify 25 prospects. The next step is draft an outreach template, maybe an email or a letter. Send 5 daily to those individuals, to those prospects. See how we've just turned that stress into energy and into motion, into action? And what was the most important thing I said was don't skip recovery? Well, I wasn't going to skip it. I'm getting to that. And then you need to perform, after you've done the 5 daily, is your walk after your outreach block. And almost don't think about what you just did. Just go out and walk. Try to think of something else. I challenge you. You'll find that your stress drops and your momentum rises. You may even find that after you've gone out for maybe a 5 or 10 minute walk and come back, that you have a voicemail or a return email, or a, hey, I really like this idea. I can't wait to get in touch with you. How about next week? An invitation. So you've got to put things in motion and harness that energy to relieve the stress. Stress doesn't mean you're failing. It means something matters. Assign it a direction, and it becomes your fuel. This has been another great episode of Ask Adam Live. Now let's go out and make it a great day.